Here's your 10-minute warning. Big Ten TED Live starts in 10 minutes. Welcome, Big Ten fans. This is Big Ten Ted Live. Today, it's all about the coaches. That's right, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Big Ten Ted Live. And we have a lot to talk about. So today, here on the show, we're going to talk about Jeff Brohm, of course. That might be our main topic of the show here today on Big Ten Ted Live. Jeff Brohm leaving Purdue to take the head coaching job at Louisville, one of the worst kept secrets in all of college football, that Jeff Brohm wanted to make his way to the city of the thoroughbreds. So we'll talk about that. Jeff Brohm going to Louisville. PJ Fleck signed a contract extension today as well. So Fleck will remain in Minnesota through 2029. 1 year onto the end of that contract. $1 more million as well. A little bit in the pool for assistants as well. So we'll talk about PJ Fleck and his extension. We're also going to talk about Jim Leonhard. He announced that he will not be staying at Wisconsin past the bowl game. There's some rumors heating up about Jimmy Leonhard making the move to Purdue, maybe other spots as the defensive coordinator. Here, Nebraska still doesn't have a defensive coordinator. There's a lot of options out there for our old buddy Jimmy Leonhard. So we'll talk about him leaving Wisconsin here after the bowl game, and we'll talk about him and his defense not exactly meshing with Luke Fickell and what he has on his defense. We'll talk about that. We're also going to talk about a 12-team playoff. Yeah, that thing called the playoff. Kevin Warren, our beloved Big Ten commissioner, came out today and he said it'd be wonderful if the quarterfinals were on campus as well. So I'll kind of talk about that here as this show progresses. But of course, the big news is Jeff Brohm making his way out of Purdue and into Louisville. A lot of candidates right now are being talked about. Not sure if Drew Brees is one of them, but you never know. If Deion Sanders can do it, maybe Drew Brees can do it as well. So let's talk about Jeff Brohm. Jeff Brohm is on his way out of West Lafayette, Indiana, and he's headed to Louisville. Now, this is one of the worst kept secrets in all of college football, in all of college athletics right now, because obviously the Brohms very involved with Louisville over the years. Jeff has played there. Brian has played there. It really should be no surprise to anybody that Jeff Brohm took this job. Now, if you're a Purdue fan right now, you should not be saying, what could we have done to keep Jeff Brohm? Oh, woe is me, woe is us. There should be none of that from you in West Lafayette, because really, there probably was only one job that Jeff Brohm was going to leave Purdue for, and it was this one. It was the University of Louisville. Look, Jeff Brohm has elevated Purdue football. There's no question about it, right? That big win against Ohio State, a handful of years back. What he did against Iowa last season. And, of course, these top 5 wins that he's been able to compile. And, of course, 7 to 8 win seasons as head coach of the Boilermakers. What he's been able to do with Purdue and then finally get them to the Big Ten championship this season has been nothing short of, just really, really good. And what he's done at the wide receiver position, what he's done, of course, at the quarterback position. Look, Rondale Moore to David Bell to Charlie Jones. If you're a wide receiver, Purdue maybe has become a destination for you to really get to that top level. I think that has been proven over the last 3 to 4 years. And Jeff Brohm is a part of that. Jeff Brohm and his coaching staff is a part of, we've always talked about the cradle of quarterbacks at Purdue, and that has continued, of course, with Aiden O'Connell, but the wide receiver room has been a place that has developed NFL talent as of late. So, Jeff Brohm out of Louisville. The big question is, who's next? Okay, I have no insider connection. I have no insider information to West Lafayette, Indiana. I've never been to West Lafayette, Indiana. I'm sure it is a wonderful town. But here are kind of some names. I'm just going to float them out there. Okay, I'm just going to float some names out there, and then we'll see what happens from there. So when I look at Jeff Brohm leaving, who could be his replacement? There's one guy that kind of went to the top of my mind. What about Gus Malzahn? What about the Gus bus coming on the train tracks? Okay, when I look at Gus, he kind of has a similar mindset to the way Purdue wants to play, a spread offense, wants to put points on the board, get the receivers involved a little bit, develop some quarterbacks. Like, you look at what Gus Malzahn was doing as the head coach at Auburn when they were facing Alabama, like, he was splitting 50-50 against the GOAT. Okay, and Auburn and those boosters that have a mind of their own ran him out of town. So why couldn't, and Gus Malzahn, what he's been able to do, obviously Scott Frost was there and then Josh Heupel was there. Why can't Gus Malzahn be that next guy in line that can make a step up and make a program better? Look, they're not going to expect you to do a whole lot as the head coach at Purdue either. Like, you won't have Auburn type expectations. You'll have expectations, 7 wins, 8 wins type of season. And why can't Purdue kind of compete once you get past Ohio State, once you get past Michigan, Penn State, and then USC's coming in? Why can't Purdue compete at that top of that second tier with a Michigan State? Why can't they compete with a Wisconsin, with an Iowa, Minnesota? Why can't I think they can compete? I think they can be. I'm not going to say they're going to be at the top of that tier every single year, but why can't they be an upper mid-level team in the Big Ten Conference? And I think this job is attractive to coaches that have an offensive style and that can sling the ball down the field. And they have proven that, because that's what works and that's what wins at Purdue University. Now, I'm going to bring up another name. I'm going to bring up Jim Leonhard. Okay, because with what has happened recently at Wisconsin, Jim Leonhard's going to want his shot at Wisconsin, and he's going to want it quick. And what better place to do it than a fellow Big Ten West foe that just so happens to have an opening right now? Now, here's the deal. He's not an offensive coach. He's not an offensive mind. So he's going to need an offensive coordinator to really come in and run the offense and really kind of mesh with what it has been and what it will be. So I could see that happening, where Jim Leonhard really improves this defense, really takes it in another direction, takes it to maybe a place that Purdue hasn't been defensively. And then on offense, this is an offense that still kind of does what they like to do. They like to throw it around. They've got good receivers. They got good quarterbacks. That's a dangerous combination. A lot of times in today's day and age of college football, you see offense that like to sling it around, but a lot of times you don't see a dominant defense on the other side of the coin. So maybe that could happen at Purdue. Want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think? Who do you think is going to be the next head coach at Purdue? There is potential with this Boilermaker program. Okay, so I really think Purdue has a chance. Now, they're going to have to move quickly. That's the thing about college football. That's the thing about today's day and age of college football, is that you got to move quick. Early signing period is coming up, and Purdue's got 2 quarterbacks in their system, and Michael Alamo and Brady Allen, I think his name was. 2 4-star quarterbacks sitting back there in the quarterback room for Purdue. 2 guys that could step in and do some good things with the Boilermakers. Maybe, just maybe, that a new coach comes in and he can salvage those recruits and keep them in West Lafayette, because Jeff Brohm transfers. Maybe one, maybe both of them end up transferring out of the program. So that's something to keep in mind, as well as we continue kind of going down the pike here for the Purdue Boilermakers. There's a lot of factors in here. Where does Purdue want to go? How much money do they want to spend, right? With this new Big Ten contract, right? CBS and NBC coming in, these schools are going to be making around $100 million a year. So there might be some money to burn. They may be able to burn 6, 7. Remember, Jeff Brohm was getting paid $5.1 million. Okay? Why can't you bring it again? Oh, maybe we can pay him 6. Maybe we can pay him 7. I don't think you're going to have to pay that much for a guy like a Jim Leonhard or a Gus Malzahn. I don't think you're going to have to get into that stratosphere where you're paying him a bunch of money. But if they really want to, maybe, just maybe, they could go after a guy like that. But it should be interesting to see what direction they go in. Do they go in, with more of a defensive guy and then bring in, kind of a good offensive coordinator? Or do they do something else? And do they, go with an offensive guy that can maybe tweak a few things, but still kind of mesh and still kind of fit in to what Purdue wants to do as a program. So Purdue's will have a new head coach here pretty soon. Want to throw out another name? Mike Locksley, the current head coach at Maryland, right? They have an offense over there that's kind of throwing it around a little bit. Why can't Mike Locksley come in? And I know, what's the move? Okay, you're moving from Maryland to Purdue. A lot of it would have to do with money, because I don't know if moving from the Terps, what he's built there, right? He's got, I think he'll have Talia Tungavailoa kind of coming back for another season. Okay, you kind of got that going on. So if he does move, maybe Purdue, it kind of fits into with maybe what Mike Locksley wants to do as head coach of that program. But Boilermakers got to move quick. And hopefully they make a good coaching decision, because Jeff Brohm was a very good coach. He was a very good coach at Purdue for a good amount of time, and this job was one of the very few jobs, maybe the only job, that Jeff Brohm was going to leave Purdue over. So thanks everybody for joining here the stream tonight. Remember, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. We got Big Ten content every single day, uploaded videos, live streams about twice a week. So subscribing will be able to get you notifications to when those videos or live streams are taking place. So make sure you do that. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Also, follow on Twitter at Big Ten Ted on Twitter. A lot of times that's where the news comes. That's where I get a lot of my news. Follow a lot of good accounts, a lot of good reporters across the footprint of the Big Ten Conference and all throughout college athletics. So that's a good place to follow me as well. I retweet a lot of this news, a lot of Big Ten news that has kind of gone on across the conference. So that's a good way to kind of, and good to stay notified when I'm going live, uploaded videos, that kind of thing as well. Good way to support the channel, although, is via the super chat. Sometimes when the comments are coming in, you want to get your question, you want to get your comment highlighted. A super chat is a great way to do that. A great way to support the channel as well. We've got Rattler Sports Network kind of chiming in here right now. Purdue has Ohio State next. Yeah, tough year. The schedule is not favorable right now for the Purdue Boilermakers. So whoever does come in as the next head coach at Purdue is going to have a little bit of a tough time. Okay, so that's, I think, one thing that we have to focus on is the schedule. Okay, because and of course going forward into 2024, right, with the California schools coming in, schedule's not going to be easy. Okay, and you got to know that. This is for any coach in the Big Ten Conference. Schedule's not going to be easy, but you got to put it out there, and you got to try to do your best to put out a good product, no matter where you are, because it's going to get tougher. It's going to get tougher and tougher and tougher. In the Big Ten and the SEC, that's going to be very, very difficult. We'll talk about the 12-team playoff here towards the end of the show, and kind of what I think about that. Some formatting things that maybe I would change. And it's going to open some things up for additional teams. Not saying it will open things up for a team like Purdue, but it could open things up. The Sports Network of the Rattler Variety also predicts a 3-9 season for Purdue. I'd have to look at their schedule to see, where, when, and how. I'm not the one. This is just me. Everybody's different. This is just me. If I'm not the one to make predictions until, so many transfer portal things are happening. We're going to get transfer portal window right now in December. We're going to have your recruiting class in the early signing period in a couple of weeks. Well, there's a lot to happen in the short-term period right now. There's going to be a lot of things kind of going down the pike to happen. So that's the beauty of this, is maybe in years past, we were like, yeah, you look at the schedule, transfers, right? They had to sit out a year. It was kind of easier to maybe predict the future a little bit. But now with all these transfer movements, we'll all have a good idea with what Purdue and maybe other teams can kind of do here throughout. If, once we get to January, once we get to February, that's when we'll have a good idea. That's when we'll have a good idea of where things are headed. So we'll see at that point. Because I think there's another remember, there's a transfer portal window after spring practice. That's when Charlie Jones went from Iowa to Purdue. Huge move happened late. And now we have our transfer portal windows. There could still be something like, I have not mentioned this on the channel because it is not a Big Ten topic, but look what's happening at Colorado with Deion Sanders, right? He's going to bring in his kid, who's a pretty good quarterback. He's going to bring in all of these guys. Travis Hunter, I thought I read today, the number one recruit from last year's class that flipped from Florida State to Jackson State at the last minute. You look at a guy like Travis Hunter that might be making his way to Boulder, Colorado. Going to make this a quick comment because this is a Big Ten stream and I don't want to get too off topic right here. But Deion, if you've ever been through Colorado, Boulder, Colorado is one of the most beautiful towns in these 50 United States. It is one of the most scenic areas. How much that matters to the high school kid, I don't know. It matters a lot to me. I like driving through scenic towns. But, that's just one attraction. And of course, you've got the recreational stuff that people take part in Colorado, which I'm sure isn't a downside either in the state of Colorado. So we'll see. There's a lot to go there. So I drove through Boulder, Colorado on my way to Rocky Mountain National Park when staying in Estes Park. Highly recommend, by the way. So thanks everybody for tuning in to the broadcast. More from Rattler Sports Network. Alex Padilla by MSU. I assume you mean Michigan State. I've kind of thought of, here's what I've thought of with Michigan State. It seems like the more time that goes by, maybe this isn't going to happen, but I thought maybe they'd move on from Peyton Thorne. And, I don't think Padilla's an upgrade, I guess, in that respect. So, but it seems like they don't really have much of a choice beyond Peyton Thorne. I think that's just what, they're going to stick with right now. So I don't think that's really going to change that much. They're going to have to build some players around him because what we saw a couple of years ago is that Peyton Thorne is much better when you surround him with good talent. Okay, you surround him. Maybe they can get the running game a little bit better with Colorado transfer Jarek Broussard and Jalen Berger. Jalen Berger got a lot better as this season went along. Talking a lot about Boulder, Colorado. Maybe he'll get him to – Colorado's a bad team. Okay? They're fair. If you don't watch, I watched the Golden Blue Dude. I watched a video that he put out about Colorado and kind of their results this season. That's not a good football team, man. It's been a bad team with different coaches that have been fired there. They've been very bad at different eras, so to speak, with different head coaches. So yeah, it's not great for the folks. But you get a new breath of fresh air. Deion. I like Deion. I think he can do some things. I think he can recruit. I think he can relate to a lot of these kids, but there are still a lot, and there's still a lot of people out there that can maybe come to Colorado. Maybe they can turn some things around. So there you go. So we're just talking about Jeff Brohm. Thanks, seeing some more people here coming into the stream. So thanks for joining me tonight. A lot of coaching news out there. You wanted a coaching day. Today's your coaching day. Okay, we will get to PJ Fleck and his, we'll get to PJ Fleck, his contract extension. I know that's been talked about a little bit on this channel in the past about, okay, is PJ Fleck doing a good job? Is he not doing a good job? I think that's kind of been talked about throughout this as well. So that remains to be seen. But, I think he's kind of set the bar right there. We're also going to talk about Jim Leonhard. Okay, is Jim Leonhard going to do some things? Possibly, is he going to go to a different job? Obviously, he is going to go to a different job. I should say that. Where is he going to end up? He's going to be the head coach of Purdue. That's going to be a very interesting thing as well. We got some Colorado talk kind of going on in the comments, which is fine. They won a national championship in 1990. They were pretty good in 94. What was the year that Salam won the Heisman? I forgot what year that. I'm not sure if that was 90 or 94. Early 90s. That was their block, right? Now their games against Nebraska weren't very close. Okay, now we're kind of getting back, right? Nebraska's a Big Ten team, so now we can kind of talk about it this way. That's our way in to talk about Colorado, I guess, right now. That was their era. That was their period. Now they could never get it done against the Huskers. They could never win the Big 8 championship. They could never go down to the Orange Bowl. They could never get it. They could beat everybody else. Okay, they could beat. They could beat Oklahoma. Wasn't that great in the 90s. I'll say that. So they weren't that great then. And then, so that maybe opened things up, right? We talk about, let's relate it back to the Big Ten Conference right now. Okay, remember when Ohio State, Tressel, that whole transition, when you had an interim coach with all this stuff, you had an interim coach, and of course you had the Sandusky thing going at Penn State. When both of those programs were down, and now that's when we had leaders and legends, so the divisions were a little bit different. But when both of those programs were down, that's when Wisconsin rose up, right? Wisconsin won 3 straight Big Ten titles, or it was 3 straight Rose Bowls, because remember they had that 7-5 season. Ohio State and Penn State were on probation or whatever. Sometimes you have those ebbs and flows where, okay, these normal powers are down a little bit, and now you got to come back, and then somebody else rises to the occasion. That's what Wisconsin did there in the early 2010s. You've seen now that when Ohio State and Penn State have kind of regained their form, that's when Wisconsin takes their seat at the 8-4, the 9-3, and the sometimes 10-2 table. So, and that's kind of what happened back in the 90s with Colorado, right? So many years. If you know the history of college football, I've studied the history of college football for a long time. Okay, Nebraska and Oklahoma battled it out in the 70s, battled it out in the 80s. Barry Switzer, Tom Osborne, going all the way back. I think Osborne started in 71, I think it was. And then you had Bob Devaney. Before that, you had Bud Wilkinson, if you want to go all the way back. That the longest, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the longest winning streak in major college football history belongs to Oklahoma and Bud Wilkinson sometime in the 50s, maybe, I think it was, maybe 50s, 60s era, sometime in that era as well. So, you got, what the point is that there's ebbs and flows. Okay? So, sometimes teams go down and the other one comes up. Then can you stay at that level when you're on the come up like that? We're getting some comments here about Nebraska, or, Lord Radin checking in here today. Still wish the Big Ten would have taken Kansas instead of Nebraska. Yeah, that's because they're both AAU schools. I really thought maybe this is an off-season video, but I'll give you guys a little bit of a teaser about it. I really thought that my ideal Big Ten expansion would have been when we were at 10 teams. I would have gone Penn State, obviously, and I would have tried to find a way to get Notre Dame in there as well. Maybe, this is complete hindsight, 30 years in the past, right? I would have tried to do that. I would have tried to get Notre Dame and Penn State to try to get 12, and then maybe Nebraska and Kansas, or Nebraska and Colorado could have joined a little bit later. I know there's been some opinions about Rutgers. And I know Rutgers gets you, I guess, New York City, even though when we talk about markets, we talk about fans in the market. Are there Rutgers fans? Are Rutgers fans watching in New York City? Are there? I don't think, to be honest with you, I don't think there's a lot of college football fans in New York City. Okay? Like, I honestly think that's the truth. So I think New York City is more of a basketball area, which you're kind of seeing that now with Rutgers. And I'll get to basketball. You know, I got to be in the basketball mood before I really divert a lot of resources in there. Haven't gotten there yet. That usually comes in middle to late January, when the football picture starts to clear up a little bit and the bowl games are over with. But Rutgers look, they just beat Indiana. Clifford Amore is one of the best players in the Big Ten right now. Like, they've got I see them as I think eventually, all due respect to Greg Schiano, I honestly believe Rutgers is a basketball school and they're going to become a basketball school. And that's kind of how it is, with some of these teams, in other conferences. Like, look at Kentucky in the SEC. They're kind of referred to as a basketball school. Don't tell Mark Stoops that, by the way. Some of these schools have the basketball name tag on them. Some of them have the football name tag on them. So, that's kind of where it's at. So the beauty about these live streams is that you guys interact and I pivot, because we're going to get to our topics. We're going to get to Jim Leonhard. We're going to get to BJ Fleck. I'm actually going to talk a little about the college football playoff. I'm going to even talk about a little about Braylon Allen coming back to Wisconsin. But right now, we're kind of talking about the conference and the conference structure a little bit. So I'm going to go through some comments here right now. Mark Edwards, Nebraska was so close last year to getting back into the national picture. I mean, they lost all their games by 10 points or less. One-score games. You don't need to tell Nebraska fans that more than once. I'll tell you that much. Yeah, so look. When you look at the Huskers, when you look as them being added to the Big Ten in 2009, they eventually, their first season was in 2011. When you look at them joining the conference, right, what do you want? You want what it is nowadays. What is money? It's eyes on screens. It's eyes on televisions. Nebraska has fans all across the country. Nebraska's got Calabrasca, right? They got fans in California. They've got fans out east. They got fans down south. They got people. Their fan base is so big. I think that's why Nebraska was such a attractive option to add to the Big Ten, is because they were going to have fans all over the place. They were going to have fans watching out in California, the Pacific Northwest, up north, North Dakota, Montana, wherever. They were going to have fans watching from all across the country. I honestly believe that's why Nebraska was such an attractive option to the Big Ten. Of course, their football prowess in the past is another big reason for that, but I believe it's their fanhood, eyes on screens, and a lot of people watch Nebraska games. So I don't hate it. I try to view myself as a college football traditionalist. I grew up in the era of 11 with Penn State. I was born in 1991. So I'm very much an 11-team Big Ten guy. I even think our 14-team conference now is not that bad. What's the best version of the conference? Maybe 12. Maybe the 12-teamer. Right, when you had Nebraska in there, I think you added a lot of, how do I want to put this? You added a lot of just extra slack, so to speak, with Rutgers and Maryland. They add to the bottom of the Big Ten. And once again, of course, the Big Ten is not hurting for money. There's no doubt about that. But always the thing is, when you add more teams, that's less revenue. That gets taken away that's more revenue that gets taken away from some of these other things as well. Some people talk about Oregon as a possible team that could join the Big Ten Conference in the future. Now, here's kind of my take on Oregon. Oregon, of course, what Phil Knight and Nike has done with the Ducks, I think Oregon is a solid addition, but I don't think it moves the needle enough. Okay? That's where I'm at with the Oregon Ducks. Look, they've got LA. The Big Ten's already got LA. What else do you want out west, to be honest with you? Do you need Seattle? Do you need Portland? No, you don't need the Pacific Northwest. Okay, do you need a recruiting? Do you need viewers in the Pacific Northwest? No. I mean, LA, like you got LA, Chicago, and New York. You got the three biggest markets in America in your conference. You got the three biggest sets of eyeballs already in your conference. I believe Big Ten presidents have said, well, let's slow down on expansion. Now, I honestly believe going forward, and I could be wrong. I'm not Kevin Warren. I'm not helping out with these decisions, obviously. But when I look at this and I look at the decisions that they're going to make with conference expansion, I think going forward, it's going to be very selective. Okay, I don't think they're going to expand just to kill the Pac-12. Okay, because I don't know if does it benefit them. I don't know if it does. I think what's going to happen right now, we got the Pac-10 back. I think San Diego State's going to join that league and then one other school. Like what we've learned, remember when Texas and Oklahoma left and, Big 12's done. Big 12, forget about it. It's going to dissolve like the Southwest Conference. You know what happened? They went out. I think this happened before the new commissioner, but, they got Cincinnati, they got UCF, they got, Houston, and they got BYU. Like they got the Houston market, they got Cincinnati up there in Ohio, and they got Orlando, Florida. Okay, they pegged three different parts of the country, and then, of course, they had the beautiful town of Provo, Utah. But, they're going to be just fine. Just like I think the Pac-12 is going to be fine. I don't think, personally, I think the way the Pac-12 disintegrates is if the Big 12 can get in there and raid them. But I don't know if they can get back into SoCal and add San Diego State. I honestly think they're going to be okay, and they're going to be fine. But that's kind of where I'm at with that. Kind of talking about some more Big Ten talk here, more from Lord Raiden. One of the reasons the Big Ten isn't hurting for money is because of Maryland and Rutgers. They do bring a lot. I mean, Washington, D.C., New York City, Sometimes not every addition to a conference. It's not going to be a Texas and Oklahoma and Nebraska. It's not going to be a big marquee football brand. Sometimes it's going to be, like those are Maryland and Rutgers. Those are basketball schools. I think we're quickly learning that. That might be okay. It might make a bowl game, but you got to have some depth. Not every team is going to be a blue blood football school that you add to your conference. You got to be strategic in the way you kind of add some things here. So Stanford is more valuable than Oregon. Also, Google Oregon's yearly research budget. They aren't a Big Ten team. I know academics. I know there's other things that aren't in that discussion as well. Stanford, right? A lot of university presidents are all about the academics. Okay? Partnering up on research, that kind of thing. Doesn't get much better in academics than Cal and Stanford in the Bay Area. Okay? Like, if that's important, I think there's a balance between these AAU schools, between academics and athletics. I think academics and research is important. Athletics is pretty darn important, too. You got to bring something to the table in terms of that as well. So I don't know. I think Stanford and Cal check those boxes. I'm not sure if they check the boxes in terms of athletics. I know they've been good in football before, but I don't know. I don't know how it's at right now. Going through a little bit more comments, some good discussions right here. Erica Goldberg, welcome to the show. I would have been fine without Nebraska, Maryland, and Rutgers. So that's staying at 11. I feel like it's a shame it's no longer a Midwest conference. You're speaking my language. I'm a Midwest guy, born and raised in Wisconsin. I lived in Fargo for a little bit, and I live in the Twin Cities now. Like, I'm a Midwestern guy. It was always this up north, bring your lunch pail, tough conference. And it's not really that anymore. I was fine. I'm fine with the 14 schools because, Rutgers and Maryland are still kind of north, went from a Midwest to more of a northern conference. I was fine with that. I believe it was the Jim Delaney, the former commissioner of the Big Ten, always said I think he mentioned this when he added Rutgers and Maryland. He said that we've gotten to a point where he wanted the schools that were added to the Big Ten, he wanted them to be contiguous. He wanted them, he wanted New Jersey and Maryland to touch Pennsylvania, which of course was Penn State. And now with USC and UCLA, of course, with Kevin Warren, we've gotten away from that. So there's that. I don't know. I'd be fine with, I guess I'd be fine with a nationwide conference. But it'd be nice for it all to go completely nationwide, from Nebraska maybe to Colorado to Utah to Arizona to California. But, that's just wishful thinking, I guess, at this point. All right, here, more from Lord Raiden. Only Pac-10 teams that have won the Big Ten: Washington, Stanford, and maybe Cal. College football playoff is going to change a lot, people. Okay, now you got automatic qualifiers. If I'm in Oregon or a Washington, do I want to mess with Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State? Do I want to mess with the big boys in the Big Ten to try to get into the playoff? Now, maybe I have a better chance of getting in as an at-large because I'm playing better competition, better schedule. But, man, if I'm in Oregon or a Washington, to be honest, I know money plays a big part into this as well. But in terms of competition, I'm saying I'm sticking put in the Pac-12 because, man, Oregon, Washington, we battle it out. Maybe Utah, maybe Dion and Colorado will kind of come up and do some things. But I think it's an easier path to the college football playoff, which, of course, there's a lot of revenue in that as well. I'll kind of get to that. I'm going to talk some CFP stuff here before we are all said and done. Oh, man, a little bit more here on this because that's the topic. I go with the flow of the live chat and everything as well. Not everyone lives in the Midwest. Unfortunately, it's a great place to live, by the way. If you can handle the cold and the weather, like we don't get, I shouldn't say, besides like tornado, we don't get hurricanes, we don't get earthquakes, we don't get, really tornadoes. If you live in a flat area of the Midwest, that's kind of where I grew up in an area where there was back in, what year was that? 96 maybe? Oakfield, Wisconsin. There was a big EF4, EF5 maybe tornado that kind of ripped through there, basically destroyed the town. A lot of farmland, flat land out there. So if you're in a hilly area, I'm in the Twin Cities right now. But if you're in a hilly area, if you're in a valley, so to speak, you usually don't get those tornadoes. But I love living in the Midwest. That's just me. Alumni bases is a big thing, those alumni numbers. That's why Nebraska is a big thing. The large fan base in different parts of the country and, spread throughout like that. There was a big reason in adding the California schools. A lot of Big Ten alumni out in California as well. Mark Edwards has an opinion on the Pac-12. Needs to stay the Pac-12. I wasn't excited about the Trojans and Bruins coming over. It feels like cheating on a spouse except one time. It feels weird, man. It is weird. I still haven't really come around to it that much. Maybe we'll see them actually do something and actually play, and maybe my opinion will change. But at least when they added Nebraska, at least like they were contiguous and they were in the area, Maryland, Rutgers, and Nebraska. Now it's a complete move in the other direction for the Big Ten. They're kind of going the other way. But, Kevin Warren will say whatever he wants. He doesn't make decisions in a real school. Academics pay the bills. Yeah. So, sometimes the commissioner isn't always maybe making all of the decisions. There's other people involved. University presidents. There's other people involved. We got Erica, Midwest born, Midwest raised, checking in. Illinois, went to Northern Illinois, DeKalb, Illinois, if I'm not mistaken, is where NIU is. Went to grad school in Iowa. Midwest, I tell you, it is, if you're coming from California, if you're coming from different parts of the country, that's what's cool about America is the culture. I've traveled to a lot of places out west, and it is different, right? In the Midwest, we go and, we might go for a jog or we might go for a hike as outdoor recreation. People in Utah, they will literally go what they call canyoneering. They will get a rope and they will go and they will climb up a friggin' canyon like with their children strapped to the edge of this however mile deep canyon or whatever it is. And they'll go canyoneering. So that's an interesting part about America is the different parts. I like the changing of the seasons. I worked with someone that used to live in San Diego. It's 60, 70 degrees and sunny every day of the year. I like the variety. I like the seasons. I like the fall colors. I like it when it starts to get a little bit cooler. It's football weather, right? That's how you know Big Ten football is right around the corner. Then you get winter and you get the winter activities. It'd be hard for me to live in an area and live in a climate in the winter where there's not snow on the ground at Christmas. That's just the weirdest thing to me. And I know there's a lot of the world out there that doesn't have snow at Christmas, but it'd just be it would just be a very weird situation. It'd be a very odd situation. So there's that. Speaking of the Midwest, yes, thanks Rattler Sports Network. I was at the North Dakota State-Montana second round FCS semifinals, running the lead EVS replay machine for the ESPN Plus broadcast. It was fun. Fargo, if you've never been to Fargo, it's flat. It was really windy. It was really cold, which it's Fargo. I lived in Fargo for a year and a half. But that's kind of as long as we're talking about Midwest areas. That's, it has become, it's gotten, it's not the desolate wasteland maybe it's been in the past. It's a up and coming college town. If you're someone that's maybe if you're younger, looking at college, or maybe you're a parent that is looking to send kids to college, North Dakota State, I'd give it a thumbs up for a college town, especially if they're in the Midwest looking for something like a agricultural type of career. North Dakota State is a great school for that. So there's that as well. Mark Edwards, the Big Ten will never be able to do the Lewis and Clark east to west. If they do the Big Ten, it will be all the teams north of the Mason-Dixon. A lot of people have been saying the Florida teams, Florida State and Miami. I know they're not AAU schools right now, but that's a lot of, some people have been saying that's Kevin Warren's next big target is down in Florida, so he can grab those markets. I don't know. I think Notre Dame obviously is on the radar. Notre Dame, you talk about fan bases and academics, you talk about the complete package. We've known Notre Dame has been there for a long time. Now, Notre Dame kind of brings the Texas factor, the political factor where, they're going to want certain things and they're going to want to do. So do you want that in your league? I don't know. That's not my deal anymore. More from Lord Raiden. Here's the only flaw in your statement. Okay, let's see what you got. ADs don't make these decisions. When Washington gets invited, it is the Board of Trustees, it is the president. So I will give you that. Athletic directors are, to be honest with you, he brings up a good point. Athletic directors are fairly low on the totem pole as it comes to making these decisions. Okay, it's the boards, it's the university presidents, it's how much money can we make. I'm sure the ADs are involved in the discussion, but they're not the ones obviously making the final decisions. Like that's so Lord Raiden does bring up a very good point as it pertains to that. So thank you for that. Pitt versus Penn State. Dave Valensky, thanks for checking in. Dave Valensky wants to see the Panthers and the Nittany Lions. I'd have to go back and look at the rivalry history of this matchup. I'm not sure. I know, when you had Tony Dorsett back in the 70s for Pitt, I think Pitt had a better time playing them, back when they had the old Pitt Stadium. That'd be nice, Pitt and Penn State. I think the reason they haven't added Pitt is because, they've already got a foothold in Pennsylvania. I think State College is, obviously Pittsburgh and Philly are on the opposite sides of the state. So they feel like they have that already with Penn State. Maybe adding Pitt wouldn't bring a lot, but, it's money, but he's talking about rivalries. Erica's tornadoes don't happen as much anymore. It sure seems that way, doesn't it? Sure seems like you don't get tornadoes ripping through EF3s, EF4s, EF5s. I don't think you get that anymore. Northern Illinois was the king of the MAC for about a decade. They were good. They were good. Not an original MAC school, but when they joined, they were pretty good. I'll tell you that one. I'll tell you that much. So good point there on the MAC. I've been hearing some stuff, seeing some stuff in the chat about Iowa State. They don't really bring a ton. The only thing that they are an AAU school. The only thing that you could maybe say they were decent. I don't know what they are in basketball now, but they were under Hoiberg, and even going a little bit back, they were a decent basketball school, but they're not like a Kansas or a Carolina where it really jumps off the page. Even Kansas, right? The Big Ten, if they had the opportunity to grab a school like Kansas, and they didn't grab Kansas in the last round of realignment. I think that's what the Big Ten thinks about Kansas. Even though I think Kansas is a decent, Kansas would be a decent get. When you look at Kansas City, on one side, you look at St. Louis, kind of on the other side. Or, no, that'd be in Missouri. I don't know my geography. Definitely Kansas City. You got Kansas City, Mark, and whether they even want Kansas City. I don't even know if that has enough eyeballs, but, so there's that. It's getting eyeballs, right? The networks pay the Big Ten to have the rights, and they want to have eyeballs in all parts of the country. Advertisers, right? How much are advertisers willing to pay? It all depends on what schools are in your conference, okay? If there were an advertiser out there that said, yeah, I would pay $2 million, whatever it was. I don't know what people pay for advertising. I would pay X amount of money, and it's a huge gob of money, if you had Kansas in your conference. Because I want to see I want to sponsor Kansas basketball. Okay, if a lot of people really lined up and said, yeah, we'll pay big money for Kansas basketball, maybe they'd do it. But I just don't know if there's that big of a demand. Because I'm kind of in the same boat where it's hard for me, especially now with transfer portal going on now. We're going to have the playoff in December pretty soon. A lot of people, including myself, don't really get into college basketball, to be honest with you, mid to late January at the earliest. And at that point, there are a couple of things into the season. I just don't think basketball moves the needle that much. If the Big Ten wanted Kansas for hoops, they'd have them already. I honestly believe that. I honestly think that's how it would go down. So that's kind of how I see there. So people, a lot of checking in. We got some Midwest people checking in from Champaign. I've never been to Southern Illinois. I've just driven through the Chicago area. I've never been in Minnesota, right? We've got the Twin Cities, and then they call the rest, some people call it outstate, which don't call it that. Greater Minnesota is a more, I guess, politically correct term to say to kind of make everybody happy. I've never been to Greater Illinois, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I've driven through Chicago, Rosemount, the suburbs, that kind of area, but I've never been to Greater Illinois. So if that's something I should do, please let me know. Let's see. Lord Raiden, Florida State and Miami are pushing to get in as AAU members as soon as possible so they can get into the Big Ten. Here's my thoughts on something. Okay, when we look at the next round of realignment, which could be when the ACC deal folds in the 2030s, imagine if the Big Ten gets Florida State, Miami, even if they get a school like Georgia Tech, even if they get a school like Georgia Tech, okay, Atlanta, and a good AAU, good academic school. You get into that southern recruiting market, and all of a sudden that really opens things up. Because right now the SEC owns Atlanta and the Florida and all of these great Louisiana and all of these great southern recruiting footholds. Now the Big Ten gets Miami, Florida State, Georgia Tech. All of a sudden, that is going to change the recruiting game a ton. I honestly believe in the next round, if the ACC comes up for the picking, so to speak, between the SEC and the Big Ten, I honestly think if I'm Greg Sankey at the SEC, which I am not, I am the farthest thing away from Greg Sankey. I am protecting my turf and trying to keep the Big Ten out. Miami, FSU, Georgia Tech, whatever. I'm keeping them all in. If they want to get into the Carolinas, if they want to take North Carolina, if they want to take Duke, etc., great. But I'm not letting them into my territory. As a Big Ten fan, yeah, I'd love to get into the South and be able to recruit the South. But you got to think the SEC is going to try to keep that their territory. I don't think there's any question about that. So Florida State and Miami. I see a lot of these comments where I see, you should have an out-of-conference game every year against a team. Penn State and Pitt is one of them. I honestly think with a lot of this conference shifting, you probably should have Nebraska and Colorado every year. Like, that should be a yearly match. I don't know about Oklahoma. Because when you look back at Oklahoma, okay, that was not a yearly – the last time that was a yearly rivalry was 1995. Because remember, in 96, the Big 12 was formed, and you had Nebraska in the North Division, Oklahoma in the South Division. And they didn't play every single year because I don't know what they did with protected rivals. I don't know what the Big 12 did at that point of time. But they did not play. They didn't play every year. So, so there's that as well. So I think Colorado is technically, more. And I think they're more on the level than maybe Colorado. But now it doesn't matter because they're both going to be in the same conference now. But Texas and Texas A&M probably should have been a rivalry as well. But I'd like to see some of these rivalries like, UCLA and Cal should probably be an out-of-conference rivalry every year. So it'd be nice. I hate scheduling these games 10, 15, 1,800 years in the future. I think that's got to change. I don't know how it's going to change. I don't know. I don't think it will change. But, yeah, it's just that's my opinion as well. So kind of just scrolling through some comments here. Really appreciate everybody for showing up here tonight. A lot of good discussion about, the Big Ten Conference right now. Lord Raiden thinks Kansas is going to end up in the Big Ten when it's all said and done. I'd go for that. I would like to see that. We'll see. We'll see what happens with the Big 12. Big 12 has been targeting the four corner schools with Utah, Arizona State, Arizona, and Colorado. So we'll see what happens over there. Just looking at some more here. Thanks, everybody, for coming here in the comments right now. A lot of talk about who's going to end up where, what's going to happen at what time. Big Ten, let's see if I agree here. Yes. Oh, we're on the same wavelength. ACC, North Carolina, you got to keep Carolina and Duke together. You got to keep that basketball rivalry together. Virginia, yep, agree with that. I would say, I'd say they're going to try to get Notre Dame right out of that when that ACC deal possibly folds. They're going to try to get in the Carolinas, try to get a little bit more south, up and down the East Coast as well. Mark Edwards thinks they just need to pick up Texas. And it's game over. Yeah, maybe that would have been a little bit more forward thinking to get Texas. A&M was, I know that goes all the way back, but that's obviously hindsight is 2020 right now. So it's whatever. But yeah, the Texas schools would have been interesting. So yeah, there's a lot out there. There's this SEC deal with ESPN does not have the amount of money that it does it doesn't have the amount of money right now that the Big Ten does. Big Ten's going to be having a lot more money. Our SEC schools, I know that seems crazy to think about, but our SEC school is going to maybe chase the money and go to the Big Ten. I mean, look at a Missouri. Who knows? It's going to be extremely fun to watch. So thanks, everybody, for contributing to the conversation a lot. The future of the conference is definitely something that I'll probably talk a lot about in the off season when we get to that point because there are a lot. There's some talk about divisions in the live chat right now. When I look at divisions, I think they're going to be going away, but you got to find a way to do some better scheduling, okay? Because I think we want to preserve, some of these rivalries. I don't want to see Michigan and Ohio State back-to-back weeks. That's just me. That's just me. Got some new people popping in to the stream right now. Just remember, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Subscribing kind of helps you stay in tune with what I'm doing. It helps you kind of get on board for live streams. There's an upload. It kind of goes right to your YouTube feed, so you can hit that right away. So subscribing to the channel kind of helps you get that content right away. Also, Twitter is a good place. I retweet. I post a lot of Big Ten news. Like I'm retweeting a lot of transfer portal, a lot of entering the NFL draft type of stuff. So that's a big part where where I get news as well. If you feel so inclined to support the channel, Super Chat is a great way to do that. Also, when there's a lot of comments, like right now, there's kind of a good amount of comments here coming in. I kind of get lost. I scroll up and down, so it's a good way to get your comment highlighted so I can maybe steer the show in a different direction. So if you want to support the channel that way, that is a great way to do it. So we're going to move on. We're going to kind of transition here. We talked about Jeff Brohm before, so if you're new to the stream, I'll be posting that video tomorrow from this show, or you can kind of scroll back and find it that way as well. So I talked about Jeff Brohm. He's leaving to take the head coaching job at Louisville. So there needs to be a new head coach at Purdue. Now there's a candidate, a guy by the name of Jim Leonhard. Okay? So Jim Leonhard has announced he will not be a part of the staff after the bowl game. Okay? So he's going to be leaving Wisconsin. Him and Luke Fickell couldn't really, I don't think he was going to stay. I think that report that came out that said he was going to stay, I think was it wasn't solid. It was, you heard from a couple of outlets, but there was nothing solid about the report. But obviously this report now coming straight from the source on Twitter via Jim Leonhard that says he will not do that as well. See some comments about basketball. I might get to that later. I got some opinions about Big Ten basketball. I'll tell you that much here. But I want to talk about Jim Leonhard. Jim Leonhard, it will not be staying on the Wisconsin coaching staff past their bowl game, the Guaranteed Rate Bowl against the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Now, this frees up a lot of possibility for Big Ten teams outside the Big Ten, because Jim Leonhard is one of the best defensive coordinators in the entire country. Jim Leonhard can go anywhere he wants, right? A couple of years ago, he was rumored to be the defensive coordinator, possibly the defensive coordinator with the Green Bay freaking Packers. Like what he's been able to do at Wisconsin and been able to churn out this good defensive talent and really good defenses. At some point last season, they were the top defense in the entire country. Like it's crazy just how good of a defense that Jim Leonhard has been able to put together in Madison, Wisconsin. So when you kind of take a look at Jim Leonhard and you look at Luke Fickell, they don't really match up. They don't really mesh well together. Okay, because Fickell's I think he's going to kind of run a 3-3-5 type of scheme. Jim Leonhard doesn't really match up. Luke Fickell's kind of more of a defensive guy. It's just not there right now. I just don't think their philosophies, their schemes really match up that well right now. So I think that obviously was probably a big point as to why Jim Leonhard is not coming back on Luke Fickell's staff. Another reason he's not coming back, probably because he has some self-respect. Right, I think there was a lot of support for him. There was a lot of players. There was a lot of alumni. There was a lot of people outside the program. There was a lot of support for Jim Leonhard to be the permanent head coach at Wisconsin. And then when that didn't happen, you could sense a little bit of his frustration, when in some of these press conferences, well, I didn't hear that, that kind of thing. I think Jim Leonhard wants to be able to prove. I think he thinks that he has earned the right to be the head coach. Maybe not at Wisconsin, but maybe somewhere else as well. So I think Jim Leonhard is in that category right now. Now, Wisconsin, I think, is going to be just fine. They're going in a really different direction. They just hired the offensive coordinator at North Carolina. Okay, North Carolina is not a very similar offense to what Wisconsin has ran in the past. I'll tell you that much. Like, that's the deal with the Wisconsin Badgers. So Luke Fickell is taking this program and turning them into something different. And Jim Leonhard probably didn't see eye to eye on that. So now, where can Jim Leonhard kind of transition to? I think that's the big question. Purdue, why can, I know that job just opened. Maybe by the time people see this video as well, it might not be, that job might not be open, or who knows, he might have that job already. But, you look at Purdue, get a good chance to kind of get back at your Wisconsin guys pretty soon, playing in the same division. You've got that. I look at him at defensive coordinator jobs. Nebraska has an opening. I could see that. I could see USC needs some help, definitely on defense as well. So, there's a lot of possibilities. He can go anywhere he wants. And I think maybe what Jim Leonhard realizes, it's time to divorce from Wisconsin. I think kind of like the Graham Mertz situation, both parties are for the better for maybe not being together right now. It's time to graduate. It's time to move on. Jim Leonhard is going to be a highly sought-after guy on the market right now. I want to know what you guys think about this. Where do you think Jim Leonhard is going to end up? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, because Leonhard is one of the very best in the country when it comes to defense. So, when I look at Jimmy, I see a lot of potential. I see a lot of potential with wherever he ends up. I honestly believe he could turn around a defense, and he's someone to keep an eye on when it comes to this Purdue opening. I honestly believe that as it pertains to Jim Leonhard. Mark Edwards, Leonhard played for the Badgers 01-04. That's during the Barry Alvarez era. Went on a walk-on. You want to know an interesting story about Mark Edwards? Not Mark Edwards. He's the one that left the comment. I don't know an interesting story about Mark Edwards. You want to know an interesting story about Jim Leonhard? He's from Tony, Wisconsin. Went to high school at Flambeau High School, northern Wisconsin, small school. My dad went to high school, I believe, with Jim Leonhard's dad as well. So, they grew up in the same area. I visited that area. Big Jim Leonhard sign when you enter Tony, Wisconsin. So there's a mini connection, I guess, I have to Jim Leonhard. And a lot of people in Wisconsin, especially northern Wisconsin, just revere this guy. Up there. So he's a big part to this program as well. Later in his NFL career, Leonhard was signed by teams who saw him as a coach on the field. Yeah, I knew his grandfather, but not Jimmy. So maybe there's some connections going on here in the Big Ten Ted live chat as well. But when I look at Jim Leonhard, he's going to attach somewhere. Maybe it's the NFL. Maybe he's like, you know what? Maybe it's time for me to move on. Maybe it's time to, maybe it's time for me to be done with college. Maybe it's time for me to go to the NFL. Who knows? Maybe he wants to be a defensive coordinator in the National Football League. It could be. USC is going to be a Big Ten team pretty soon. They need a lot of help. If you watch that Pac-12 championship game, you know what I know. USC needs a ton, and I mean a ton of help. Yeah, it's not a good situation, I think, at Wisconsin right now, because, man, I really thought that Jim Leonhard, it was going to be, if he did a decent job after those Purdue and Maryland games, I thought, oh, man, he's doing good. Wisconsin looks to be turning it around. And obviously they didn't play well down the stretch. The Iowa game, Nebraska, they didn't lead until really late in that game. So, yeah, it's tough. It's a tough situation, but these are situations where I think Jim Leonhard is going to grow. And I think Jim Leonhard he's going to grow as a man. He's going to grow as a football coach. And he's going to make a team very, very happy. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So that's kind of my thoughts there on Jim Leonhard. So here's something that, I don't know if you guys saw this in the live chat before, but if you scroll all the way to the top of the live chat, I can leave a link as well. I do have it. I didn't mention this. I didn't tease it. I probably should have. But up in the top of the live chat, there's a link. I do have over on this big monitor to my left here, I do have it set up for live video calls. So if you want to call in and if you want to have a discussion here on Big Ten Ted Live, that line is open. Now, hopefully it's my first time using this. Done some testing, so hopefully there's not a ton of technical difficulties here today. But if you want to join the show, give me a break so I don't have to talk all the time and take some water breaks. That's one way to get involved as well. I'm trying to do more of that. Trying to have a more interactive type of experience here with the show. So Jim Leonhard on his way out. Should be very interesting to see where old Jimmy Ballgame ends up. Does he end up staying in the Big Ten? There's some defenses that could use Jim Leonhard's help. I'll tell you that much. So what else we got here in the show? I want to quickly talk about, someone mentioned in the live chat, and I'm going to try to bring up this comment, and here it is. I assume you're talking about Braylon Allen. Braylon Allen is staying at Wisconsin. Okay, he tweeted that out, supporting, the program and the direction the program is going. Braylon Allen, that's a huge get for Luke Fickell right now. That is a gigantic addition for the Fixter, because when you look going forward, you want something to build off of at Wisconsin. And Braylon Allen is a guy that you can build off of. Okay, because if Braylon Allen transfers out of there, Isaac Guerrero, that other running back, already transferred out of there as well. Like, when you look at these guys, it's like you need something to build off of. And Braylon Allen keeps that building block. At his best, he's one of the best running backs in the Big Ten. At his best, he can be one of the best running backs in the entire country. If I'm Luke Fickell, okay, I know I've got a building block. I've got to build around Braylon Allen. Okay? So what I have to do now is I got to get a better offensive line. Big question is, who's going to be the quarterback at Wisconsin? Okay, that's another thing I got to figure out. There's a lot of quarterbacks in the transfer portal. Luke Altmaier, Spencer Sanders, DJ Uiagalelei, Hudson Card. Like, there's good quarterbacks out there in the transfer portal that can make a team a lot better. And I think there are going to be teams that are going to be a lot better at the quarterback position. They're going to upgrade. Is Wisconsin one of those teams? It remains to be seen. Obviously, Graham Mertz, the former Wisconsin quarterback, who knows where he's going to end up as well. If Jim Leonhard goes to Purdue, does he bring Graham Mertz with him as well? They got 2 4-star quarterbacks in that Purdue quarterback room, Michael Alaimo and Brady Allen. So, there's a lot going on there. There's a lot going on with the Wisconsin Badgers, with Braylon Allen coming back to Wisconsin. But I think it's a little bit of a sigh of relief for Luke Fickell. All right, I got my best player coming back. You take a look at Skylar Bell on the outside, a new offensive coordinator, new system, a lot of changes should be seen. I will say this, to give it context, the tweet from Braylon Allen was before they made this hire as offensive coordinator. So it remains to be seen if that is going to change the mind of Braylon Allen going forward. Yeah, so there's that. Just running through some comments here right now. Yeah, very entertaining USC Utah game. It was quite the matchup. That I was in my hotel room in Fargo on a Friday night, and I'm watching this, and I'm just like, wow, going back and forth. Utah, you talking about a Big Ten team? Utah's a Big Ten team. Tough, physical, defensive. Kyle Whittingham seems like a Big Ten head coach. That seems like a Big Ten head coach. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, some good stuff coming on here down the pike in the comments. Really appreciate you guys for being around here for Big Ten Ted Live. Aiden O'Connell, I think he's out of eligibility. I thought he was a senior. I'd have to double check on that. But, yeah, I believe he's a senior. So, yeah. I don't know. I'd have to double check that. So if somebody else wants to double check that, but yeah, I assumed he was a senior. That's one thing that I guess I'll plead a little bit of ignorance on that as well. Ken Schaefer coming in. Love to see Leonhard and Braylon Allen at Purdue. Ooh, what if the Wisconsin? How about this? What if the Wisconsin train chugs its way down to West Lafayette? Braylon Allen. Graham Mertz. Purdue fans say, we don't want Graham Mertz. Ooh, I don't know if we want that smoke. Yeah, like you want a place, like Purdue's got a lot coming back. When you look at Devin Mockabee, all right, you look at Mockabee And you look at some of the receivers with TJ Sheffield coming back, Andrew Sawinski. Like there are some people right now that could do some things. I really like what is happening at Purdue, and I think you get a quarterback, you get a transfer receiver in there. Who knows what can happen? But you got Mockabee already in there. I don't know if Braylon Allen is a guy that I could see transferring to Purdue right here, right now. So, that's kind of where I'm at with this. Mark Edwards coming in. Fickell should have gone to Nebraska, and Leonhard should have been hired at Wisconsin. Wisconsin made a mistake, not with Fickell, but not giving it to Leonhard. Fickell's the outsider. All right. That's a topic. That's a show in and of itself right there. Because you've got Wisconsin outside of the Gary Anderson experiment. And I will say this about the Gary Anderson experiment. When you look at what Gary Anderson, I was interning at the NBC TV affiliate in Madison when Gary Anderson was a head coach. So I'd go to practice and collect some sound for the newscasts and stuff. So I remember that era. I do remember that era. But outside of that, you look at Barry Alvarez, Brett Bielema, Paul Chryst, and Jim Leonhard. They're all within the Barry Alvarez family tree. Now, that family tree has provided some good years at Wisconsin. But this is a good hire. Luke Fickell is a great hire at Wisconsin. It's a little bittersweet. Okay? Not every, I'm a big fan of the television show Yellowstone. Okay? And in the show Yellowstone, there are characters. There's Beth. There's Jamie. There's John. Sometimes in episodes, they do evil things. Sometimes they come back and they do the nicest things in the world. Not everything, like Yellowstone, not everything is completely black and white. Just because Wisconsin should have hired Jim Leonhard doesn't mean that that Luke Fickell isn't a great hire. Both can be true at the same time. And I believe Luke Fickell is a great hire at Wisconsin. It's thinking outside the box. And maybe if Wisconsin wants to step up and wants to contend with those top tier teams in the Big Ten, maybe they have to step up. And I'll tell you what, if Wisconsin wants to contend, God, man, they need to renovate the McLean Center. If you know anything about Wisconsin, that McLean Center, their practice facility, is very old and it is not in good shape. So both, what I'm trying to say, both can be true. Look, if I'm comparing them, if I'm a Wisconsin fan, I'm happy with the hire. Not saying I wouldn't be happy with Jim Leonhard, but man, this was a guy in Fickell where a lot of teams wanted National Coach of the Year last year. It's a great guy, great hire, and he's going to lead, I think, Wisconsin to some good seasons. I really honestly believe that. Yeah. Michigan family tree starts in Columbus. That's interesting with Woody, then Bo, then Moeller, then Carr, and then Billy Martin screwed the pooch with Rich Rodriguez. But yeah, sometimes the trees, the family trees kind of are kind of in a different area as well. So there's that. But, it's a lot, I'm just, I know where I'm going to have to wait a long time to figure out what's going to happen with these coaches. Where are they going to, we're going to find out a lot about these coaches pretty soon. Like, we're going to find out a lot when the transfer portal really opens up, when we start to get these high school classes in, we start to see this guy going here, this guy going there, that kind of thing. So we're really going to start to see, that kind of coming into its own, to see how these teams are going to look. I think it's really hard to judge how a coach is going to do without us really knowing who's going to be on the team. So I think that's an important part to this as well. So, that's where a lot of it is all. A Wisconsin tree started with Hayden Fry. It all goes all the way back I honestly believe Hayden Fry. When you talk about some of the best coaches in Big Ten history, you talk about Woody, you talk about Bo, you talk about a lot of guys. Hayden Fry, I think, needs to be in that discussion. That's just me. That's just my opinion. Great coach, legendary coach, obviously at Iowa. What Iowa has had throughout a couple of runs here, with Hayden Fry and then going right to Kirk Ferentz, it's amazing the production that those two coaches have had back to back. It's like going from Favre to Rodgers, or Peyton Manning to Andrew Luck. It's been crazy. Just the longevity between Hayden Fry and Kirk Ferentz at the University of Iowa. All right, let's kind of move on a little bit here in the show. Let's talk about our good buddy PJ Fleck. Just got a contract extension. Is looking at one more year added to the end of the contract, $1 more million kind of per year, I believe it is. I think is what they're doing. A little bit money for assistant coaches, more money for assistant coaches to try to retain guys like Joe Rossi and some of the good coaches, Kirk Ciarrocca, and some of the good coaches on the coaching staff at Minnesota. So PJ Fleck is extended. PJ Fleck, Minnesota. The marriage continues between the Gophers and PJ Fleck. Now, Minnesota has been committed to what PJ Fleck is trying to build. They're committed to sticking with the row the boat culture. They're committed to everything that's going on and what PJ Fleck is building at the University of Minnesota. They show that by continuing to put more money into the program. And this is a guy in PJ Fleck that has changed the way people think of Minnesota football. Okay, a couple of years back, pre-PJ, you might have thought, yeah, you get into a bowl game, you get 6 wins, you get 7 wins, thumbs up on that type of season. Now PJ Fleck's 6 wins is a disappointment. Maybe 7 wins is a disappointment. Right now, that bar, that expectations is at 8 wins. 8 wins the last couple of years. You look back last year in 2021, you look back at that Bowling Green game where they should have won. There's a lot of different things that you can talk about with PJ Fleck and what he's done for this program, right? He's the row the boat guy. You look at recruits all across the country now can identify Minnesota, whereas before they might have been a flyover program. You can identify the Gophers with the row the boat signature. And you can say Fleck is all about himself, running out before the team. You can say whatever you want. The results speak for themselves, and how he's raised the elevation and how he's raised the expectations at Minnesota has been nothing short of, at the very least, really, really good for everybody here in the Twin Cities. Now, 2023 is going to be an extremely pivotal year for PJ Fleck, okay? Because when you look at Fleck, you're not going to have Muhammad Ibrahim. You're going to see, right, is your guy Ethan Kaliakmanis, is he going to be the future of the program? Right now, they're losing some transfers on defense. You look at Braylon Oliver, you look at Flip Dixon. They're going to have to do some things in terms of turnover to try to keep up that good Minnesota defense, offensive line. There's going to be some turnover for Minnesota in 2023. Can they continue to meet the bar and raise the bar, I think is going to be a question, because they've leaned so heavily in Muhammad Ibrahim the last couple of years. 2023 is going to be very telling to see what happens with the future of the Minnesota Golden Gophers. I think another thing we got to look at, did they peak in 2019? Did they peak too soon? Did they just have, was it a fluke? Was it a one-year wonder? What was it, for PJ Fleck and the Minnesota Golden Gophers? I think we need to talk about that. Did they peak too soon where now Gopher fans' expectations? Well, you got 11. Where's my 10-win season? Where's my 9-win season? That's the big question. Look, that was a pre-transfer portal year, and I think that's changed a lot because a lot of times now with the transfer portal is people are upgrading programs. They're going from Minnesota to a Michigan. They're going from a Minnesota to a Penn State, things like that. They're looking for greater opportunities. Maybe NIL money, of course, now is a very important part to college athletics as well. So I think that's a big part of this, and I think that's going to be a big part kind of going down here in the future. Was it a peak year? That remains to be seen. But right now, that looks to be kind of the case. Look, they had really good talent on that year. I don't think they've been – Muhammad Ibrahim, of course, is great talent. But Can they equal the talent of having 2 NFL receivers? Can they equal the talent of having an NFL type of defensive back that was Antoine Winfield Jr.? I think that remains to be seen. Where PJ Fleck is going to have to do, this is a developmental program. He's going to have to bring kids in, and he's going to have some of the best developmental coaches and developmental coaching staff in the Big Ten in the entire country in order to get back to the 10-win level, 11-win level. It's going to be really tough with USC and UCLA coming back into the conference, but we'll see if Minnesota can do it. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Did he peak in 2019? Do you think PJ Fleck has deserved and earned this contract extension and additional money? I think he has, because he's taken Minnesota to a new level and set a new bar. I really believe that's kind of where we're at with PJ Fleck right now. So, you know, he's a good coach. Okay, this is look. I'm not saying he's a great coach. I'm not even saying he's a really good coach. I'm just saying he's a good coach. He's a good coach. Maybe he's a great salesman. Maybe he's a great, I wouldn't call him a great recruiter. I think he's fine. You know, where Minnesota's at right now as a program is they're a middle of the road team right now in the Big Ten Conference as far as recruiting goes and recruiting rankings are concerned. Okay? That's kind of where we're at right now. So, you know, if he continues to do that, if he recruits to the middle of the Big Ten, which now with 16 would be 8th in the Big Ten with 2 more teams coming in, if he recruits 6th to 8th in the Big Ten and develops that class to be a top 4 to 3 class in the Big Ten Conference, maybe that's the formula. Maybe that's how you win at the University of Minnesota. It's very possible that is how you indeed win in the Big Ten Conference. Just going through some comments here. PJ, love him, hate him. He is who he is. That's very true. And then maybe that's what makes him unique. And that's what makes this Minnesota program unique is he's kind of made, once again, whether you like it or whether you don't, he's kind of made this program into his own program because Minnesota really didn't have much to go off of in the past. Okay, Minnesota was a flyover program, and now he's kind of made this into the PJ Fleck program. And I think that kind of feeds into what people have said about him. He's all about himself. He's all about all this and all about that, and he's a selfish guy. It's about him running up and down the sidelines. Fine. If that's what it is, if that's what you think, fine. If you want to think it's all about him, great. But he's raising the bar at Minnesota. Look, that may be true. Maybe he is all about him. Maybe it's all about his phrases, his deal. But when I look at PJ Fleck, I see a guy, personally, I see a guy that is building Minnesota. Look, Minnesota, I don't think is ever going to be a team that's going to consistently win 9 or 10 games. I just don't think that. I think this is going to be a team. This is going to be a team. This is going to be a program that's going to have ebbs and flows. I really believe that. I don't think you're going to be able to consistently get to that level. I don't think a lot of teams are going to be able to consistently get to that level that aren't USC, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State. I think it's going to be very up and down kind of past that. So we'll see what happens with Fleck, but I think he's doing what he should be doing. Mark Edwards, I think Minnesota is just about dead center of the Big Ten. So far, potential versus execution. They are also dead center of the Big Ten in terms of geography now as well. So, he's not right here. He's a schmoozer. I won't disagree with that, even though I am a Fleck fan. I like what he's done with this program. I like the positive energy he's brought. It might be about him. I might not disagree with that. And he's got a shtick, okay? But I'm fine with you having a shtick if the shtick works, okay? If you're able to get kids in, if you're able to develop players, like I said, this 2023 season is going to be a huge season for Minnesota, okay? It's going to be a huge season where, okay, all these kids that you've been recruiting, All these transfer portal departures, are you going to be able to replace them? Okay, are you going to be able to get to that level? I think get back to that level. I think that's what people want to see. I'll tell you one thing though, Twin Cities media ain't doing them any favors. If you know it or live around here, you know what I'm talking about. So yeah, it's tough. It's a tough crowd. It's a pro sports community. It's not a big college sports area here in the great state of Minnesota. It's very Vikings, Wild, Twins, not so much the Wolves. That's what it is. And if their college team isn't winning 10 games a season, there might be some people who might kind of fall off the wagon in terms of their deal. So, that's just how he is. That's just what he does. But getting back in 2023 is going to be very important. It's going to tell me what direction this program is going in. And then, of course, you look at the contract extensions of things saying, well, maybe, just maybe, they think he's going to go somewhere else. Maybe, just maybe, we're at a point where maybe Minnesota fears what might happen. Kind of going at it. So it should be interesting to see what happens with PJ Fleck here down the road. But they're keeping him here in Minnesota. Been here for quite a minute now. It's been 5 or 6 years already for PJ Fleck at the University of Minnesota. Schmoozer must be an Upper Midwest thing. Sure. Just a salesman. Yeah, that's kind of how he is. Kind of putting on a shtick to kind of get what you want, so to speak. So that's kind of where he's at right now with PJ Fleck. Really appreciate everybody for joining the show here tonight. It's been a good one. A lot of news coming on here down the pike as of late. Just a reminder, if you haven't already, great time to subscribe to the channel. There's Big Ten content every single day here on this channel. So if you are a Big Ten fan, you know that this is the place to be with all the content every single day. Thank you to those who have subscribed already and made this show as fun as it is. Twitter is a great place to get involved as well, at Big Ten Ted on Twitter. That's a lot of my, you see the reaction videos here on YouTube. You want a really instant reaction, you want it up to second. Twitter is the place to get that. A great way to support the channel is via the Super Chat as well. See your comment highlighted, and to support the channel, Super Chat is the way to do that if you so choose. So one thing I kind of wanted to end the show on today, and this could take on a life of its own. College football playoff, 12 teams starting in 2024. Kevin Warren was asked about things today, and he said it would be wonderful if the quarterfinals were at home fields. Right now, the first round games, right, the round of 12, so to speak, first round is on campus, okay? That's the first thing, okay? And then once you go to the quarterfinals, neutral sites, they're bowl games. And then you get the quarterfinals are bowl games, semifinals are bowl games, and of course the championship is the championship. So when I look at all of this and I kind of think about it, I'm like, we could honestly get into a scenario where you have to win the Fiesta Bowl, the Peach Bowl. Let's say the Peach Bowl. You have to win the Peach Bowl in the quarterfinals. Okay, this is a bad example. Let's rewind. You have to win the Rose Bowl in the quarterfinals to get to the Peach Bowl in the semifinals. You got to win. That just doesn't seem right. Okay, because you got to think these bowls are going to rotate, right? It just doesn't seem like the Rose Bowl should be, or like the Sugar Bowl or the Orange Bowl or some of these more prestigious bowl games shouldn't have to rotate. Okay? That's how it seems to me. That just seems really weird. Another thing I want to bring up is that it also seems that when you look at the home games for some teams, you look at those top four. Now, I need to get those top four conference champions. They get buys, and I get that's important. That's great. But if those other teams get home games, shouldn't they get home games as well? Like, when you really look at that and you really think about it, they're like, yeah, every higher seeded team should have a chance to play a home game. Okay? Like, that's how I see it right now. Like, every team should have that chance to get a home game. Can you imagine, man, quarterfinals and then the next round to get it going? Like, man, it's crazy. It's crazy right now how awesome that would be. Look, I'm an old school guy, bowl games, whatever. But man, having those first two rounds of the playoffs on the home fields would be awesome. Now I understand why Kevin Warren sees it the way he does, right? If you have those games, the Big Ten champion, if they're playing at their home field, yeah, I totally get it. I totally understand it, that we're in a situation where, it's crazy. Where, yeah, cold weather, you want those games at home. It's an advantage. I get it. I understand it. But I think those conference champions, they should be at the point where they should get home games as well. I think that would make a perfect playoff. And then rotate the semifinals of the bowl games that you do now. Sure, yeah, you won't get as many of those really good, matchups in the Rose Bowl every year. You're going to get 13 versus 17, number 15 versus number 19, things like that. I get that. I understand that. But to be honest with you, I think it's worth it. Okay, because bowl games really don't mean as much anymore. I'm fine with having those bowl games in the semifinals, but it just doesn't really make any sense if we're going to rotate these things. It doesn't make sense to win the Fiesta Bowl to get to the Sugar Bowl, because it should be in order. It should be to win the Fiesta to get to the Sugar. If you're going to tier bowl games, I could go for having the Rose Bowl and maybe the Sugar Bowl as permanent semifinals, and then the other games kind of have their way with certain things as well. Like, I could see that. But man, I don't know. I think there's a lot to be. I hope Kevin Warren uses his influence to really get in and really do some things as well. Really appreciate the super chat from Mark Edwards, friend of the channel. Keep it going. Excellent. Really appreciate it. I'm not schmoozing. He ain't schmoozing, people. Yeah. I appreciate you. Keep working on the call in. Yeah, well, if people are interested, I just thought I saw someone try to call in and then it flashed and went away. Not sure if that was just me or something, but yeah, if I put the link in the live chat if you're interested in joining the show. That's why I was wearing the earbuds earlier. But if you're interested in joining the show, talking, there's the link to do that. No pressure today, but just know that will be an option going forward. So very much appreciate the super chat. Like Mark, if you want to support the channel, a super chat is a great way to do that. Really appreciate that as well. Mark's got a new favorite word, schmoozing. We learned a lot. You never know what you're going to get. Okay, if you're ever in a situation you're like, I don't know if I should watch the Big Ten live stream. Just know you never know what you're going to get. You might be talking about schmoozing. You're going to learn new words. You're going to have new stuff going on. Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at. So really appreciate everybody for joining this here this week. Here he is, the one, the only, Big Ten Johnny is here today. Missed so much because of the rehearsals. John is a professional. They're putting on a professional Christmas concert at Hosanna Lutheran Church. It's going to be a good show. I'm going there on Friday. So me and Big Ten Johnny are going to be there. Are we going to do a live stream from this Christmas concert featuring the Minnesota Orchestra? That's a question we need to ask ourselves. All right. But he says, missed so much content this week, but here just to make it known. I'm pretty sure I'm the only one around here that said TCU would make it in with one loss. Big Ten Johnny, you are right on the money. You are correct. You know, at first, me and John were texting. I was sitting at a Wendy's. Sir, this is a Wendy's. In Fargo, North Dakota. And we were texting back and forth about, I honestly thought if TCU lost the committee, this was more about, I didn't trust the committee. I thought, oh my God, if they lose, they're going to put Bama in. Even though I didn't think Bama had great wins, 2 losses, I just didn't trust the committee. But I want to say good on them for putting for putting them in to this point. Okay? I want to, because they're sticking with wins and losses, undefeateds, 1 loss, those types of teams. It's weird to me, but when you look at TCU, they beat Kansas State earlier this team, and then what? They go to overtime or something. They go to overtime and they lose to I didn't watch that game. And they lose to K-State. So I think because they beat them earlier in the season, I think that, and because the game was so close against K-State, I think that's a big reason why we kind of sit where we're at with TCU in the college football playoff. But it should be a very interesting matchup with things. So we've got more talk. It seems like we talk about this a lot. We talk about weather a lot here on the Big Ten TED live stream. Joseph Ford chiming in. Man, I don't even think Michigan will want to play in Michigan in late December, early January. The weather would just kick the out of you. Yeah, December, it kind of depends. It kind of depends where you're at. In some parts, because sometimes it gets warmer and sometimes it's colder. Like here in Minnesota today, like I was doing a hockey game for work the other day. Temperatures were in the mid 20s, and I was inside most of the time, but I honestly, I really believe that it's not as cold in November. Like, I think the discussion about USC and UCLA moving and having to deal with cold weather in the regular season, yeah, that's not, because here's the deal with the Trojans and the Bruins, okay? What's going to happen with USC and UCLA is going to be, like, they're going to play their last game, Thanksgiving weekend or whenever it's going to be. They're going to play their last game against each other. So really the second week in November, you're still seeing like around here in Minnesota, you still might see a 50-degree day, in that point in time. 40, 30, you rarely get below 30 at that point. I mean, sometimes you do, but rarely do you get below 30 before December. So, but I think now once you get to the playoffs, once you get into late December, yeah, you can get a 10-degree day. You can get a 5-degree day. You can get a pretty cold day. You can get windy, that kind of thing. Mark Edwards is 30 minutes from Ann Arbor in the great state of Michigan. It doesn't get that cold in December. Now it gets brutal in late January and early February. I could agree with that as it pertains. I can relate to that as it pertains to the state of Minnesota as well. And Minnesota, right? You talk about a state that's known for its weather, cold weather. Minnesota doesn't get much colder than that. I will say this: those winters up in Fargo, those were brutal, friggin' brutal. More weather talk. It was like 45 today in Illinois. So there's that. All right, Mark Edwards, if you're not from the Midwest, born and raised, it is not cold until it's below. Okay, so, all right, we're talking weather. We're talking like when the channel is Big Ten TED, and we talk about, but maybe we talk about the Big Ten lifestyle as well. So we're talking about the Big Ten lifestyle right now with weather. Okay. Here's my story. Here's my perspective. Okay, the last 2 years, my wife and I, Big Ten Ted and Big Ten Bridget, we go hiking. We have gone hiking, winter hiking, up on the north shore of Lake Superior. 2 years ago we did it, and last year, that was on the north shore. 2 years ago, last year we went to central Minnesota, in Lake Mille Lacs, okay? Both times hiking in those areas, -10, -15 degrees. Now, I'm wearing layers on top of layers, snow pants, jackets, the goggles that immediately freeze up, those kinds of things. And I'm sweating. Like, it's not, if you prepare yourself, it's all about preparation. And if you prepare yourself for those conditions and that climate, it's great. I've been on a lot of summer trips. I've been out to Utah. I've been out to Colorado. I've been out to Montana. Okay, I've been out to those places in the summer, and they're beautiful and they're great. And they're very memorable trips. Yellowstone, Glacier, Rocky Mountain, Canyonlands, Arches, the whole thing out west, right? When I retire, I want to move out west, all right? I'm a Western guy, right? The Big Ten used to be known as the Western Conference all the way back in the day, so it makes sense. But when you talk about the cold, those have been some of my more memorable trips. When we're decked out, we're decked out in just layers, and it is, you can see your breath. We went up all the way to the Canadian border. If you've ever been up to Pigeon Falls, it's Grand Portage State Park, where you've got the waterfall that's right on the Pigeon River, where Canada's on one side and Minnesota's on the other side. It is cold, man, but it was those were some of the more memorable trips, seeing the icy waterfalls, and everything like that. So, yeah. I am a fan. I like cold weather. There is nothing better than some of these cold weather games. Brett Byer brings it up. NFL teams play in the December weather every year. You see the Niners and the Packers go at it there. Man, I tell you what, those NFL playoff games are fantastic. Okay, those NFL games are really fun in these cold weather environments. I think it really... Okay, me and Big Ten Johnny both work in TV production for various outlets, college sports, pro sports, high school sports. A cold weather game just looks great on TV. You get those slow motion shots and all that stuff. It's just fun to see on TV. And, maybe it's fun to be in the stands for as well. I wouldn't know. So, but as it pertains, we're kind of getting back to playing college football playoff games in December. That's all part of it. I know college football historically for these big games, for these postseason, for these bowl games has been neutral sites, but that's what the semifinals are for. Okay, FCS playoffs, they play all their games at home until the national championship. Even the semifinals are at home as well. Mark would love to see games in the big house. Man, can you imagine like Michigan and Alabama for the right to go to the semifinals? Like, I went back and what if we had a 12-team playoff this whole, since 2018? I'm looking at some of these matchups and I'm like, oh my gosh, can you imagine this team versus that team in the cold weather and, going this way and going that way? It's very fun. I've warmed up to the idea of this 12-team playoff, and I think it's going to be fun. It's just I hope we do it the right way and try to have it as much as we can here. Brett Byer checking in. Just got here. Jim Leonhard is leaving. Thought his heart was at Wisconsin. Yeah. So I did have a segment about that earlier in the show. I will upload the video on the channel maybe in the next couple of days about Jim Leonhard. So I'm going to talk about that. So I will talk about that. But yeah, Jim Leonhard is he's on his way out. Good for him. He's got self-respect. I appreciate that. I just don't think his scheme and Luke Fickell's scheme were gonna mesh together very well. I think that's pretty apparent as well. There's people that have to live in the cold weather, just know things. Equipment doesn't work great. I don't work great. Everything takes longer. You can't move great. It's all about planning. Boy, I mean, when we went in central Minnesota this last year when we went hiking, we did a mile. I think it was like a mile, and it felt like 5. It felt like, man, there were easier hikes. Hiking in Colorado, doing a 1,000-foot elevation and, a couple of miles, sometimes that might have felt a little bit easier than what we were doing in Minnesota in that -10-degree weather. So yeah, that there's a part to that, and I know that really has has a part of it. Okay, Erica bringing back Nick Saban. The TV thing. Holy crap. Well, I don't even know what to say about that. I don't know. Nick Saban, what happened to you, man? What happened to you? Going on and politicking? Haven't you done enough? Haven't you won enough? Isn't it time for somebody else? Vegas does not determine who plays for a championship. The committee does, which that might be a problem too. But, that was embarrassing. For I think all parties involved. Bit more from Big Ten Johnny. Will we see any Big Ten prospects move to the transfer portal with Dion, especially now that he's in the Power 5? I've been meaning to talk to Big Ten Johnny about this. And Deion Sanders at Colorado. John is from Colorado. I'm a Deion guy. Coach Prime. I think he's going to do well. There's a lot to do at Colorado, but with the portal, with everybody coming over, he's recruited really good talent. I think he's going to do some things. Will he take some Big Ten players? Remains to be seen. I think he's going to take a lot of good players. I really do. I think there's going to be a lot of good guys coming to there in the Big Ten. Might take some Big Ten players. So Nick Saban will be on every YouTube ad, every Fox halftime special. Please let me play. Let me in. Isn't there a meme out there? Let me in. Banging on the door or whatever. Like, I don't know. It's crazy. It's crazy. What he did and what he's doing at Alabama and how he's just it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense for him to gonna go on and do that. But especially in the Big Ten championship, it takes two to tango. Fox has got to say something as well. Last call. I'm going to put the last call out there to join the show via video chat because we're kind of winding down here just a little bit as well. Brett Byers saying he thought it was disrespectful that Fox let Saban on during the Big Ten championship game. First question I ask, who's producing this show? Okay, who's putting on this show? Okay? Who's allowing Nick Saban? And I'm sure it was above the producer's head and everything. I'm sure it came down from top brass, so to speak. But yeah, it's crazy. I don't know. It's weird. We're past it. It's over with. I'm just gonna forget about it. Okay. All right, John. Let's go at it. You raised a good point though. If TCU played Bama, who would the underdog be? Vegas doesn't determine who makes it in. Alabama lost twice. TCU has better wins than Alabama. Alabama's best wins are against Mississippi State, a 4-loss team, and against Texas, another good 4-loss team. I think they were 4 losses at Texas. They don't have a big win. I mean, TCU went undefeated throughout the Big 12. I mean, they knocked off Kansas State. The win against Kansas State alone is probably enough to slide TCU over Alabama. I don't think we should put, and we don't have very much of this format left anyway, but I don't think we're in a situation where we should put teams who would win in this scenario. I know it's the 4 best teams. Is it the 4 best? Is it the 4 most deserving? I think we've almost gotten into a situation where it's the 4 most deserving teams. You look at Alabama this year, all right, you talk about being the 4 best teams. Alabama, their defense was not very good. Okay? And look, they had one player in Will Anderson that was pretty decent. Other than that, this Alabama defense was not very good. Look what happened against Tennessee. You had the chance, but you lost 2 games. Okay, oh yeah, we lost by 1 possession. Great. Doesn't matter. You still lost. That's where I'm at with them. It's why we play the games. If Vegas is the gospel, then why bother booking the flights? Why bother playing the games? There you go. Well said. Saban is scared, according to Big Ten Johnny. Badass Buckeye checking in. Nick Saban was pandering like a beggar for money. It was embarrassing. Like that was the weirdest part about this. Is Nick Saban going on Fox and saying, "Let me in. Let me in." This is the GOAT. This is the guy that's won championship after championship after championship. Like, would you ever see Bear Bryant doing this? Would you ever see Woody Hayes, Bo Schembechler? College football was very different back in the day. I think it was it Bo Schembechler that said, our first goal is to make the Rose Bowl if we win a national championship. Great, so be it. It was something to that effect, I thought. That's when the Rose Bowl was a bigger deal. But still, you know, I get it. He wants to win. I get it. Nick Saban wants to win the championship. I understand where he's coming from. But, man, it's just like you had your shot. You beat either Tennessee or you beat LSU. And you're in. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. That's all you got to do. But you failed to do it. That's the world we live in. That's the world we live in with the college football playoff. All right? Like, that's where we're at. Badass Buckeye wants to play Michigan again. I want to see an all Big Ten. You know, if it's going to piss Nick Saban off more, I want to see an all Big Ten championship. Let's go Michigan. Let's go Ohio State. I think the game's being played in L.A., something like that. It's just, I would love to see that because we've been talking so much about the SEC and everything. Yeah, I would love to see that as well. We talked about Hayden Fry before, coming back again. Hayden never would have gone, you know, at that point it would have been a little bit different because the media was a little bit different. But, you know, just work harder the next season. You got to win games. That's how college football has been. It's not going to maybe be that way a ton going forward, but you got to go undefeated, one loss. Like, that's what you got to do. If you don't do that, you give nothing to blame but yourselves. Like, that's where it's at. More from Johnny. Saban's begging like his job depends on it. Like, dude, you aren't getting fired. It's true. He's like Bill Snyder at K-State. Never has to worry about his job again. Yeah, he's the GOAT. I'll be the first to admit it. He's the greatest. Yeah, just chill, dude. Chill, dude. Like, come on, man. Yeah, that was, get worked up about that. And Saban's performance and Saban's appearance on Fox was just crazy. It was just, I still can't believe that happened. That Nick Saban came on Fox and that happened. I don't know who thought that was a good idea. But you know, maybe if I'm Nick Saban and I really want to win and I really want to win a championship, that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing. I don't know. It's a little tough. I can see both sides of it, but yeah, as a Big Ten fan and as a Big Ten guy, it's not great. On the showcase of the conference, the Big Ten championship game, yeah. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at as well. So we talked a lot today about coaches on the show. We talked a lot about PJ Fleck getting an extension. We talked about Jeff Brohm going to Louisville. So we're going to have an opening at Purdue to be the head coach. We're going to have these videos on the channel later on during the week. We got Jim Leonhard on his way out of Madison, Wisconsin. He's going to be going somewhere. We don't know yet. So we're going to have that as well. We talked about a 12-team playoff. So we talked about that as well. I can't. It's going to be fun to get to that college football playoff with 12 teams. And of course, once we get down closer to the day later in December, going to be putting out some of these previews for some of these bowl games. Michigan and Ohio State, of course, in the college football playoff. I think it's time just to wrap this one up just a little bit as things are kind of winding down here just a little bit. Just a reminder, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel so you can get notifications on your phone when I'm going live, when I upload a video, that kind of thing as well. Also, I'm on Twitter. If you're on Twitter as well, a follow could be happening, could be appreciated as well. And of course, if you want to support the channel, a super chat is a great way to do that. Allows me to produce more and better content. So your support kind of helps grow the channel. Really, your support via the subscription and this as well really helps grow the channel. John Chenard brings up another good point. First, I want to get to the badass Buckeye. Should have been the coach of Wisconsin. Going to have a video about that. Should cover that earlier in the live stream. Still think they made a good hire with Luke Fickell, but Jim Leonhard's, I think, he's going to land on his feet. I think he's gonna be just fine. Johnny Ballgame says, "What's happening?" Thanks for being here, Erica. Really appreciate it. A lot of good comments here tonight. John says, "What's happening in Big Ten basketball this week?" Woohoo! Yeah. So thank you, Mark, for joining the show. Really appreciate that. Also, great job, MVP, in the comments here tonight. So getting back to John, I'm going to get to you. Going to get to you here. What's happening in the Big Ten basketball this week? Holy crap, things are going crazy. We're getting the Elmo with fire meme. That's what we're getting. Last week, we got Rutgers beating Indiana. We got Northwestern topping Michigan State. What else did we see? Oh, Nebraska going to number 7 Creighton and knocking off the Blue Jays. Purdue was playing tonight. Not sure who they were playing, but we got, I think, Wisconsin beat Maryland. Duke beat Iowa. Like the Big Ten, when you looked at Big Ten basketball last season, it was deep, but you could probably play Northwestern and Nebraska and probably expect to come out with a win. But now you kind of look at this and you say, oh, now Nebraska with Derek Walker and Sam Grayso looks pretty good. Northwestern, Boo Booey, and everybody over there. They played well, even though Michigan State was down a few guys. Trace Jackson Davis has still yet to beat Rutgers. Rutgers with Cliff Amore has been really good. Like this, the Big Ten is maybe deeper than we thought. I think a lot of people thought Indiana would be at the top, especially after that win against North Carolina. The way they played, but the Tar Heels have kind of fallen off. They're kind of a mess right now. So I look at North Carolina, maybe not as a fantastic win. But man, I look at this and Purdue, man, I look at Purdue and Illinois right now they are really good. Okay, I almost look at them as the top 2 teams in the conference right now. Indiana's still very good. Indiana's still going to be a great team. But, man, Purdue with Indiana Mr. Basketball, Braden Smith at the point. You got Fletcher Lawyer and, of course, Zach Edey on the inside, the guy that loves interviews at Big Ten Media Days. He is a freaking unicorn. At 7'4", the way he moves, athleticism, he's a great player. And Purdue is going to be really fun. Illinois loves to get up and down the floor. I love the way Illinois is playing with Terrence Shannon and freshman Jaden Epps, Sky Clark. I love the way everybody's kind of gelling together right now at Illinois. So I'll try to get to more basketball here, maybe more in January, but we'll see when it comes. Kind of right now, it's kind of when it comes up if there's a lull in the coverage. I've been watching some basketball, so I've been keeping up with basketball, so I'm not just, once January comes around, middle of January, I just don't know what I'm talking about. So, yeah, I've been watching basketball a little bit. Brett Byer, Wisconsin, without a change of culture, would not have ever elevated to elite. And maybe Luke Fickell can get them to the elite level. That's kind of the way I saw it as well, Brett, because, you kind of get into a situation where, you kind of get complacent. And Jim Leonhard would just be kind of another one of those guys in the Alvarez family tree that kind of, gets complacent. Christ and Leonhard. Then you go back to Bielema and Alvarez. They're kind of, 8, 9 wins, maybe a 10-win season here and there, but maybe Luke Fickell is the one to mess it all up. Maybe Luke Fickell is the one to get them to that next level. But he's going to have to deal with Matt Rule at Nebraska and what he's building right now. He's going to have to deal with a lot of stuff. Really appreciate everybody for coming out for the live stream tonight. I think that'll do it for tonight. Really appreciate everybody for watching Big Ten Ted live tonight. Once again, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel for Big Ten content every single day. It's the place to be for that. Also, follow on Twitter if you haven't already. So once again, new coaches, new places, new faces. We'll see where Jimmy Leonhard ends up, and some basketball coverage on the way for the country's deepest league. Once again, I'm Big Ten Ted, and we will see you in the next one.